Hey everyone, do I have a treat for you? Today on Parenting and You with me, Dr. Shefali, I am delighted to welcome Vanessa Bennett, a dear friend of mine. She is a licensed depth psychotherapist, author, and facilitator who brings a soul-rooted perspective to her work in parenting, weaving together depth psychology, feminist theory, and archetypal storytelling to deconstruct the cultural myths that have kept mothers feeling overwhelmed, ashamed, and disconnected. She is also a mother and the author of her newly released book. I'm so excited for it. It's called The Motherhood Myth, and she's a co-author of It's Not Me, It's You. I'm really looking forward to this conversation with this amazing woman. I'm so honored to welcome my dear friend, Vanessa Bennett, a licensed depth psychotherapist and author of the newly released book, The Motherhood Myth. Her work empowers women to reclaim their emotional sovereignty, move from martyrdom to authentic power, and truly own their unique journey through motherhood. Welcome to my podcast, Vanessa.
I'm so happy to be here, Dr. Shefali. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, anytime I see an email from you, I'm like, let's act on it. I've been following your journey these last few months where you suffered from the LA fires and you had to evacuate your house, and now you've moved country and you had to write your book in the midst of all of this. I cannot imagine being a mom of a young child who absorbs everything at this age, and having to keep your equilibrium and write a book and do your podcasts and do everything you do. How have you done it all? How have you been?
Yeah, I mean, before we hit record, we were just saying that it feels like it's been 5 years and 6 months, right? You still have deadlines, you still have work to do, you still have things you have to get done. You know, there's still school for the kids to get them in. And I think that I have to say one of the best decisions that I like to say I made, but I pushed us along to make very early, very quickly, was the day after the fires. When we found out that morning that our house was gone, I rallied 3 families that are all very close, that had children, that all lost our homes. And I didn't really give the decision. I just said, this is what we're doing. We're getting a big house, like an hour outside of the city, all together for at least a week so we can get our bearings and figure out what the hell is going on, next steps. And so I found us a big Airbnb, and it was chaos. There was like 16 of us at a house with, 8, I think, little kids. But now in hindsight, I realize how important that decision was for the kids, because it got to be that they weren't uprooted and it wasn't like immediate trauma. It was like, oh, we're with our friends and our family and we get to all be together. And then for us, we got to be in this bubble of, we've been through it. We know what's going on. You can start crying in the middle of a sentence and no one's going to judge you. You can scream and have rage and no one's going to judge you. And even though that was that first week, again, like I said, in hindsight, probably the best thing I could have done for all of us was to push for that. Just, we talk about this all the time in this work, but the reality of community and how important that was really made crystal clear, I think, in that moment. So it's been a long journey, but we're starting to land. We're starting to get our feet underneath us. We made the choice to move abroad for at least a year and try to get some grounding the best we can.
Wow.
Yeah.
And, just to speak of what you said, what we're losing in today's world is that intentional community. So
That's
you
right.
galvanized your loved ones and you wanted to feel safe and to have a shared experience. There's something about having the shared experience that we're losing out on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as mothers, we're not gathering with other mothers enough.
No.
We're not hanging out as a community, as a group, as a tribe enough. So I'm so proud of you that you did that for yourself and you found it to be so curative, because that's exactly what you need. Just the other day, a client came to me. She had just lost someone through suicide. And I said, you have to join a support group
That's
of
right.
people who are going through this exactly.
That's
so
right.
that you have a shared experience and you're not siloed in this isolation. So, because anything can be better when you do it with others, right? I mean, and that's why all our burial and, death and grieving have community around us, right? You go through this extended period where people come and live with you so you can break down and you have witnesses who can pick up the load,
That's right. I mean, it's the same thing with birth, right? I mean, I talk about this in the book. I talk about how we've lost this so much in our culture, these rituals and, this ability to be held during these massive times of transition, right? During these massive times of essentially an ego death. Who I was is no longer here, but I'm not yet who I'm going to become.
Yes.
It's so disorienting unless we have that community, that group, that experience of being held, the ritual
Yeah.
aspect of it. And so I was already being, my background's in depth. I was already such a huge proponent of the importance of these things. And then to witness and experience it again in January, it just kind of further cemented something I've always known so important.
Yeah. So talk to us about this book, The Motherhood Myth. Of course, I'm going to ask you, what is the myth?
The way that I broke the book down is I broke it into 3 parts. The first section's motherhood. The second section is sex. The third section is relationships. The overarching myth of the book that I talk about is really this idea that if we're not doing those 3 things well and that we're not completely fulfilled by those things, that there's something wrong with us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The societal myth. And then I go into more detail, obviously, in those 3 categories. There's so many cultural and societal myths that have been put onto us as a way to, keep us complacent, keep us controlled, keep us from asking questions, from kind of looking up the ladder and saying, why is it like this? And for really changing it, for making that change internally and externally.
Yeah. So what's the biggest myth around sex?
If you're not always in the mood, if you're not enjoying it, if you're not completely fulfilled by your partner at all times, right? Like there's something wrong. And the something wrong, air quotes, always comes back to us. There's something wrong with us. And that's always the through line in these myths where we live in these dominator cultures, right? Is that you have to look at yourself.
Yeah.
We're a shame-based culture. It's a way to keep us kind of constantly in a state of questioning, but also looking outside of ourselves for the answers.
Right. So women, especially after motherhood, early motherhood, or they've just become a new mother, our hormones change and we are not in our own bodies. Or you go through a trauma like you did.
Yes.
To land back in your body and to be connected to your sexuality is really difficult, because part of what you have to do to survive these big transitions is kind of go into your head and
That's right.
plan and be so masculine. Otherwise, you just break down in grief. So you're trying to be compartmentalized and detached and masculine energy. And for women, our sexuality can only come when we're deeply connected. So it's a conundrum for us, right? How do we do, and then be in our sexual energy? It's often a split.
That's right. You nailed it. And then also, so now that is all happening. And then on top of that, what happens so often, there's actually research that shows this competitive energy starts to enter between the partner. So we'll just talk heteronormatively here, between the husband and now that new baby, right? Especially when you've just brought the first baby into a dynamic. And what happens, and I see this so often in the couples I work with, is that then you've got the mother saying, I'm trying to keep this baby alive. I don't even have time to look at myself and question what my needs are.
Right.
And now you're coming to me with needs too. And it's like they become another child in your mind, in your body, right? And so sexuality is like off the table because I'm looking at you almost as like another mouth to feed kind of thing, right? And so there's all of these things going on in this soup that none of us talk about.
Yeah. And the need of the man to be sexually sated is also then being shamed because of the way they're approaching it or the way they are demanding it, right? And if they're petulant about it or they're, sulking, I have so many couples who tell me that, the wives are complaining, why is he sulking so much? Why is he in a bad mood so much? Well, part of it is because his needs are not getting met, granted, but he doesn't have a sophisticated, literate, emotionally articulate, attuned way to express his needs, because
That's right.
he doesn't know how to do that either. And he doesn't know how to show up for her and make it safe for her. Because I truly believe that when a woman is feeling safe, she will be sexual. I mean, it's just like she just drop into her body. But if she's in masculine mode and surviving and fixing things, and the husband or the partner is demanding, oh my God, it's a bust. Then she looks at him as one more mouth to feed,
That's right. Yeah. And, what I started to realize too, as I was diving into this book and, pulling from all of the couples I've worked with, but also my personal experience, which is really was the catalyst, right, for writing this book, was exactly what you're talking about how I think we can all agree that women are not the only ones to suffer under patriarchy, right?
Yes.
Men suffer just as much, just in a different way. And part of that is we cut them off from their emotional selves, their spiritual selves. And so often, even before a child is born, the men in our lives, essentially, they use the women in their lives, I'll say it this way, as like a conduit to to feel,
Mhm.
right? It becomes this energy like I'm siphoning it off of the women in my life. I use sex and connection in that way to feel connected to you, sure, but also connected to myself, to feel something, connected to source. It becomes a way for me to feel spiritual connection. They don't have the language to understand that. And what I see happen so often is that the women are left going, I know this isn't about me. I know your constant desire to connect sexually actually doesn't have anything to do with connecting with me, my soul. This is something else. And a lot of women around that time of early motherhood start to get angry and resentful. And then I've had these conversations where we wake up and we go, wait a second, this has nothing to do with me. And so then it kind of breaks open a whole world of
Right.
conversation, so
Right.
long as everybody's on board to talk about it.
Right. We feel used,
That's
we
right.
feel abused, we feel predated.
Yep.
And also, having lived in an objectified way, we ourselves are split off from our own sexuality too.
That's right.
We are not used to giving ourselves sexually. So man may be more entitled to it, maybe more demanding of it, maybe more access. He can access his sexuality maybe easier. But we are like eons behind him in accessing our sexuality. So when sex gets disrupted in a couple, do you find in your experience that then there's a lot of unspoken tension, unhealed baggage, resentment, right? Sex becomes such a conduit
That's right.
for a breakdown or for the catharsis.
That's right. And I think it's because just like when we say, it's never about the dishes, like
Yeah.
whatever the fight is, it's never about that. It's never really about sex.
Yeah.
It's about what sex represents. And I
Yeah.
think what happens in that early motherhood stage, again, so long as that woman is given the means and the language to be able to break down and really see these things and talk about these things, which a lot of us are not, I think what happens is we start to realize that sex was never really about us in this kind of culture,
Mhm.
right? Sex is almost always about appeasing somebody else, being chosen, fluffing up somebody's ego, keeping things copacetic, making sure the boat doesn't get rocked, right? All of these ways that women have been taught to essentially use their sexuality. And none of those things are about my actual satisfaction or actually connecting soul to soul with another person, right?
Right, right. We've never been initiated
Mm-mm.
into our own powers, our own internal sexual powers. And we do, if we don't have an initiation, we cannot enter it through our conscious awareness, right? It's
No.
just put on us. But even for the males, right? I work with so many mothers of teen boys and fathers, and I ask them, have any of you talked to them about their sexual rite of passage? And they're like, no. Let
No.
him talk about it. And then I'll ask the dad, have you done that? Was it done for you? And they're like, no. So
Mm,
the young boy is initiated into his first sexual encounter alone, often feeling ashamed, going, what the hell is this? Because it
yeah,
comes upon him too. But the female here, in terms of our menstrual cycle, we do have a little bit more of an initiation. I think just because there's blood involved, like
sure.
we need to tell our girls, right? We're like, listen, you're going to be freaked out. I remember no one told me and I was shocked. I thought I was dying,
Mm,
right? But many boys say that they thought they were dying too because they don't know what's happening to them.
that's right.
So this whole taboo and hidden agenda around sexuality doesn't allow anyone to really flourish.
No.
And then the third part of your book is about the relationship. So talk about that. Where do you see the myths coming up there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we're talking our relationship with our partner, but most people who know anything about me know that codependency is kind of my jam. I could talk about it until I'm blue in the face. In the third part of the book, I really talk about how we are a codependent society. It is the way we have been taught that love should look like, feel like, smell like, taste like, right? And really what this is I have to use someone outside of me, right, in order to self-soothe, in order to soothe my own inner angst. Most of us are not given those tools because we also were raised by people who didn't know how to do that either. And so we enter into relationships in these very transactional ways, right? I need you to perform this for me. I need you to fulfill this need so I feel better because so few of us know how to actually be with ourselves during very normal discomfort as a human being. And so we kind of outsource. And so the third part of the book really breaks down how I see all of these codependent ways of relating showing up time and time again in all of our relationships, not just the romantic ones, in our relationship with our children, right? In our relationships with our friends, our family, and kind of like, how do we start to untangle that? And just like the process of regaining some of that sovereignty and doing that work to come back to ourselves.
Aren't you married to the handle angry therapist?
Yes, I'm married to the angry therapist.
I love watching him. You can tell him doing his exercise. And I'm like, damn, I better go run now because he's like always sweating and CrossFit. I'm like, look at me. I need to go do something. The two of you are so doing your honest work in the world. Let me ask you something super personal, okay? Like go really deep
Sure.
into, like, tell us, what do you feel you have in front of you as an obstacle that you're really having a hard time deconstructing for yourself? An ego block or a pain body or something from childhood that you're not able to undo or you're in the middle of undoing?
Ooh, I mean, how many have I gone through, right? Over the last, we've been together almost 8 years. Our daughter's 5. And I'll tell you, people think, oh, you're both therapists, so it just must be easy. And it's like, absolutely not. Is it easy? I think there's been multiple that him and I have continued to address and will continue to address. I think the one that for me is the most pervasive is this whole, I have to do everything alone.
He says or you say?
That's me.
Oh,
That's
you.
my
Yeah.
internal narrative, right? I
Yeah.
have to do everything alone. I can only rely on myself, right? And no matter how much he has proven me wrong, it's still my go-to. So when I get into that defensive mode, when my kind of inner child is running the show, that's what I lead with. And he's pretty aware of it when it comes out. And, it doesn't create as much of a fight now as it used to. I think now there's a little bit more compassion, but that is for sure the one that pops up more and more and more all the time.
Wow. So talk to us about how it showed up in this trauma of the wildfires
Yeah.
and how did you really have to ground yourself like in real practical ways?
I have to remind myself to check in with him because I am, I'm the oldest child, the oldest daughter. I am the one that you want to have around you during trauma because I am so good at compartmentalizing and getting things done. I was a producer for 10 years in advertising before making this career transition. So I know how to get shit done, right? And I will just go. I will just take off and go and forget to kind of look behind me and see if he's there. So I think those tendencies showed up. What I will say, though, is that in watching a lot of my friends who are partnered throughout this experience and seeing, I don't want to say the cracks, but seeing some of the cracks come to the surface, right, in these relationships when you are in a serious, tumultuous, traumatic experience. When we came through the other side, I actually said to him, I'm so proud of how far we've come because we do work really well together. I think we've fought for that, right? I think, of course, we've got this natural ebb and flow and we do have rapport, but we have fought to get to where we are and we're not perfect. But coming through something like this, I think has shown me like how much work we've done. And it is something to be proud of.
Wow. I cannot even imagine. And it is such a bonding experience, right? When you go through a trauma, it's that shared experience. It's unforgettable. It just, people who go through war together, people who suffer an illness together, there's just something that glues you together. And now you're bonded for life.
That's right.
That's the trauma bond, but hopefully you're doing it in a healthy way. So for women out there, many of them will resonate with you because they are also what I call the shield, right?
Yes.
That's your mask. I got it. I'm going to do this on my own. I'm fine. For women like that, super strong, super capable, competent, probably high functioning, codependent, doing everything, right? How do you navigate that with your partner and allow him, not that you have to allow anyone, but how does he ensure that he too feels a leader and powerful around somebody so powerful like you? Is it intimidating for him? Is that something he's had to work on?
Yeah. I imagine we've had conversations about not necessarily the intimidation factor, but for sure him saying like, what's my place here? Right. I actually think that there's been learning for both of us, which is part of this is also who I am. And I am a strong woman and I am very capable. And I like that about myself. Right. And so a little bit of this has been this dance between how much of it is me saying, okay, let some of it go, which there has been that. And I'll say that in a second. And how much of it has been him and I working to say, this is who I am. This is who you are.
Right.
And how do we actually honor who we are without trying to change the other person, right? To make us feel better about ourselves in this dynamic. And so I think that's been a lot of work for him is to actually embrace that part of me while coming behind me and gently putting his hand on my shoulder and saying, hey, I've got this. Right. And so him being able to do that has been the way for me to let that shield down. But I'm sure a lot of the parents listening, especially the mothers, will relate to this, especially when you're in early motherhood. That is hard to let go of, right? Because we have a way we want things done. We have an idea about the way things should be done. I give a lot of credit, actually. I'll tell you a quick story. My therapist, I remember my daughter was maybe 2, because she was still maybe a little younger than 2. She was still on a bottle. And we were talking about this thing where I said, he's in the other room with her and she's screaming. She wants something and she's yelling at him, and they're like kind of yelling at each other. And I know what she wants. I know what she needs. I could just walk into the room and say, hey, she's asking you for this. It doesn't have to be that big of a deal. And I remember my therapist, who's a man, but he has children. He said, listen, we talk about this idea of building emotional resiliency in children. He said, and the thing that we don't understand, when we swoop in and we do, and we're not actually giving her the opportunity to build that emotional resiliency of saying, this person doesn't understand me right now. I have to communicate my needs more clearly. I have to advocate for myself. I have to sit in the discomfort of not being understood or not being heard. He's like, when you're constantly flitting around her and doing everything she needs before she knows she needs it, how is she ever going to develop those skills? You're also obviously undermining their relationship, right? But I just remember that being such an aha moment, even for me, already a therapist, already doing this work, to go, oh, shit, I have to let her advocate for herself. I have to let her struggle, right? And so I think it's a little bit of that too with him and I, of me going, for the both of them, I got to back off. Your guys' struggle is your work. It's your lesson. It's your learning. I can't steal that from you.
It's time for a quick break, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, we'll have more with Vanessa. I think highly functional women like you, and so many of us out there, we think that that is our way of loving. We think that is our way of creating security and worth and presence. And it is. But I think when we don't check it, we don't give that space, because there's so much competency going on that, of course, the other person, in order to allow us to be our competent selves, have to shut down their competence, right? There's no need for 2 competent people. How many cooks do you need? So without our realizing, dull the other one's spirit down and either create resentment because they don't like it, they're feeling claustrophobic, or we create this apathy. And then later in life, we're like, why aren't you where's your fire? Right? Where's your fire? Like even this trauma that you all have gone through with this relocation, seeing your house burn down and cinders, ashes. I'm sure there's been a part of you that goes, oh my God, how is it affecting my daughter? Has there been?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that, because parents get so worried about how trauma affects our children. But there are ways to mitigate it, but I'm curious to hear your experience.
Yeah, as somebody who for sure does not specialize in children or parenting, I even say this is not a parenting book. This is a book about us, right? Coming back to ourselves. I have come to realize, it's like I knew this logically, but until I had this embodied experience, it was really hard to understand how people grieve differently and how people respond to trauma differently, right? I mean, I've seen it in the way that John and I have responded differently to this. For me, it's been in waves, and it comes in overwhelming. It washes over me, and I'm a puddle on the floor even now. And then I'm fine, right? I mean, fine, air quote, fine. He was very quick. I don't know, maybe it's because he's an Aries. He was very quick to be like, okay, well, this is an opportunity. What can we do with this opportunity? And everybody in the house all crying, looking at him being like, okay, you need to keep that shit to yourself. That's not helpful.
Right.
But even with her, right, to see how she has responded. I mean, I don't want to say saving grace, but a little bit of a saving grace is that she's so young. She's 5. Some of this will be a distant memory for her someday. But like I mentioned earlier, getting her with her community, I knew intuitively that was important for her. I knew intuitively surrounding her with love was important, and that John and my stability would be her stability. At this age, we are her home. Right? So of course, she talks about the things that she misses. And when she does, I say, you're right. I miss that too. I mean, the other day we talked about the couch that we had. We loved this couch. She's like, I really miss our big, comfortable couch. I said, yeah, I really miss it too. And I miss when we would snuggle on it. And I miss when we would watch movies on that couch, right? And we talk about it. And I give her the space to just whatever's coming up, it's okay. And it can be there. But really focusing, I think, first and foremost on my stability and John and my stability, that has been, I think, again, intuitively, I know that that's the most important thing for her to then find her stability.
Because it's such a big experience, you can't lie about it, you can't deny it. Like, it's gone.
Yeah,
It's literally was there 2 minutes ago and now it's gone.
that's right.
So your daughter is showing you in real time that they can actually survive big events,
Hmm.
provided the presence of the caregivers is steady, strong, stable. It doesn't have to be cheerful or optimistic, but kind of steady.
Yeah.
And isn't that an incredible kind of reminder to the power of connection, right? We think they need that couch. We think they need the big mansion by the water. But actually, at the end of the day, those things are dispensable. And if you stand strong, wow, they can pull through.
Mm,
And she may actually not even show any signs of the trauma. And that means you have processed it and it's integrated.
that's right.
All trauma doesn't have to be traumatizing, you know?
That's right. And, also with her, I think this idea of being strong, it's been in allowing her to be with me when I am that puddle on the floor. And I'm not hiding it from her. I'm not protecting her from that, right? I mean, obviously age appropriate, but we've talked about it. I've cried and she has sat next to me as I've cried. And she has said, yeah, me too, mommy. I miss that too, right? Especially the community aspect. That's been such a big thing for us because we had this beautiful community that we were creating. I mean, we had that street where the doors were open and they were running back and forth and all the parents knew where everybody's kids were. We don't see that often anymore. And that's what we all miss more than just the structure, right? The house itself. And so I let her sit with me while I cry about missing my friends, Meredith across the street. And she talks about it, missing our friends, Lena. And I think that's just important to hear. Like that is strength too, right? Like letting her see that.
Yeah. What's been the most surprising thing you've learned about yourself in this experience?
The most surprising thing I have learned, again, I think it's like there's things that I've talked about a lot, whether that's through my work or in books, where it's like I logically knew it. I suppose it's come home for me. All of these ways that we have all adopted our coping mechanisms and our survival skills. I think in psychology, we sometimes do a disservice, like we make people believe that they're things to be gotten rid of. And I'm a very big believer that the psyche is so much more intelligent, right, than we would ever logically give it credit for. And I've always jokingly said I'm a master compartmentalizer. And I've always said it as a bad thing. And actually, what I realize is there's a lot of strength in being somebody that can say, okay, this is horrible, but right now I got to get done. And then later I will allow myself, but that's the trick. You got to allow yourself to come back and be in it. And I think that has been one of the biggest realizations for me is all of these things that I've spent 15 years in therapy trying to get rid of have actually saved me, right? And I need to honor them, actually.
Yeah, but you're actually not absent I think maybe in the past when you compartmentalize, you kind of may have dissociated or done it
Yep.
as a survival. Now you did it proactively, intentionally. You're like, you called on it. You're like, hello,
Hmm.
this part of my ego that has protected me, now I'm calling you to be, the commander. And then
Yep.
I will go into the soldier and break down later in the barracks. But right
Yep.
now, I need the commander in me.
That's
But
right.
when we can call parts of ourselves, I think, with intention and volition, that's so empowering. Like anger, you can call anger. Okay, now anger needs to be in the center stage because it's useful. I need to speak up. I need to talk like this. I need to show up like this. And then I can go back into the backstage experience and do another part of me. That is emotional flexibility. That is this expansiveness now you have where it's not a knee jerk, right?
That's right. I always say it's all about the consciousness, right? Is there
Yeah.
consciousness around it? If there is, then okay, we can work with that, right?
Yeah.
If there's not consciousness around it, then it's like you're saying, where it's the knee jerk. It's calling the shots, right?
Yep. So now you've moved to a new country. How does it feel to be dislocated in another way? Like now you're like, holy shit, I'm a foreigner in a new country. How is that experience of assimilation?
Yeah, it's been interesting. You know, again, John, we're very different people. He hit the ground running. We're also in different parts in our career. I've got this book and I'm busy and I'm in PR mode and he's on the other side of a book last year. So he's like going to the beach every day, learning to surf, and I'm chained to my office kind of thing. But what's been, I think, the hardest for me is I don't like feeling like I'm coming into another location as the white person, as the kind of the colonizer that comes in and says, oh, look at this beautiful area. I think I'm going to move here because this area is maybe better than what I left, right? And I don't speak the language. I am trying and I am learning. I'm not just going to expect everyone to cater to me, but it has been really humbling. It's been really humbling and it's really brought up into my face a lot of this, again, this discomfort that I have around, I don't want to be that colonizer. It's the best way I can describe it. There's a bit of an ick feeling. And so I just want to be here with reverence and I want to be here with passion and interest around the culture and the why and where and how. And I get fascinated by that stuff. And so I'm trying to lean into that more than my discomfort, which I think will keep me grayed out. I think it'll keep me small if I hide too much behind that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's one thing to watch that part of our legacy, but I don't think you need to doubt yourself. You're not that, right? You are clearly not that, but you're so humble to go, oh, that is a part of my history. I need to watch that part. It could show up. But if you shine a light on it like you are, it's just not who you are. So, I mean, you cannot be someone you're not either. Like you're like, maybe I am a colonizer. Maybe there's a part of me but it's not. Like, that's not you. That's not who you authentically are.
I appreciate that. That helps a little bit to hear because it's definitely something that comes up. You get a little like, oh, am I that person? But yeah, it's been beautiful though. It's scary. It's scary. I mean, I just had to get a giant scorpion out of my house earlier. That has been very fascinating.
You're in a beautiful place. We don't have to share where, but I'm so proud of everything you guys are doing. I track your journey. I know it's been incredibly hard, but what's beautiful about you and your partner, you both really are so vulnerable and show up for everyone to learn from. So I know you work with Danae.
Yes, we do. We had it on hiatus for a while and we just decided recently to bring it back. So season 4 is coming out in a couple weeks.
And what is it called?
Cheaper Than Therapy.
Cheaper Than Therapy. I love that. So this book is out. You have your podcast. What else is in the works for you?
Oh boy. I just launched what is like my absolute soul project that I've been dreaming about for years, which I'm calling the Inner Compass Academy. Over the years, so many people have come to me and said, how do I learn more about depth psychology? How do I learn more about spiritual psychology without going back to, a grad school and paying $70,000 in 3 years of my life? And so I've decided and I've kind of pulled together this team of people that I just love and respect so much within depth. And I'm created this coaching program basically. So I just have my first cohort. We're having the second one in the fall. And I'm so passionate about this work and just bringing people what I feel is work that's been very gatekept for a long time. Certain socioeconomic level, mostly white men. That has really been Jungian and depth psychology. And so I'm really trying to break that. And I want to bring this to everybody that I possibly can.
Yeah, I love that. My coaching institute, which I have, it's a 5-month course as well. It's so democratic. It allows everyone in. I tell people you don't even have to have a degree because there's so many barriers that we have created in academia and it's become so hierarchical, so elite. And we don't realize that we are reinventing the same patriarchal structures.
100%.
We don't have to give it away for free, but it certainly doesn't have to be, having to sell your mortgage, your clothes. I mean, that's what education is these days. But I think with more and more programs like ours, we are really opening up the playing field. So where can people find you?
My website, vanessabennett.com, mostly on Instagram. So Vanessa S. Bennett there. And the book, Motherhood Myth.
So your handle is Vanessa S. Bennett?
I've been on Instagram since it was actually just like the personal thing where you posted pictures of your dog.
Right.
So that's my handle from back in the day and it will stay my handle.
I love it. I mean, Vanessa, you're so articulate. You are such a leader. You're such a voice. I mean, really, I look to you for inspiration. I love your and Danae's podcast, Everyone Cheaper Than Therapy. And Vanessa, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shefali. I appreciate you.
So everyone, wow, as usual, Vanessa knows how to move us, teach us, and inspire us. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of Parenting and You with me, Dr. Shefali. Parenting and You with Dr. Shefali is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for professional medical, psychological, psychotherapeutic, coaching, healthcare, or other qualified professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment.